Okay. So, good morning. My name is Christina Dillabo. I'm the Director of Communications for the Desert Southwest Conference, and you are watching or joining us for Tuesday Talks, a weekly meeting between church communicators and a place where we share what's coming up, talk about resources, maybe asking for assistance, sharing ideas of how to work around something. Other stuff happens, but today I'm going to get us started talking about annual conference. So I'm going to open up my notes so I can find that document. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to share about is that the annual conference report is up and linked. Wait a minute, did I link it? Maybe I didn't link it. It should be on the dscumc.org/AC website. It is visible there. It's just you have to scroll down a little bit to see it. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm logged in, so there's a lot of extra stuff in here that you don't need to worry about. I will add the report here. No, yeah. And let's see, do I have it here? No, I don't. But it is also listed here under news and archives. So it's there ready right now. And I'm going to go ahead and click on it. You could click on the title or read more to get to it. Only because I want to show you that. So this is the website version, and you could certainly copy and paste into your website if that's the way your church news goes. Because then it'll save all the different formatting, and the links to the reports would go to our website. So it'll save you a ton of time if you need to post this on your website just to copy and paste. But if your church news is the type that you need to put it into a PDF or an email, you can click here to download the Microsoft Word version of this report. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share about that little bit. Questions about that? Go ahead, Sherry.
I do have a question. I wanted to ask everyone, how many of you on a regular basis every year post this or put it in your newsletters, or that how many, if you know of other churches, does this actually get published, or people, does it go into the communication going out?
Sherry, I do see it in a few churches. A lot of times I see some of the information, not all of it, written by a lay member who went to annual conference and part of their report. And so they use it, the information that way. So I do see it in this form, but more often I see it in an abbreviated forms.
Thanks. I'm just curious, Chris, did I see that it said it didn't get published? Not interested.
No, I'll post this link. So I don't know how many clicks it'll get, but
yeah, I was just curious. And my other question was, and there's no way to answer this, is that, our congregation's interested in some of the stuff that goes on at conference, or do they depend on just the information coming from the pastor then to be able to report on that? Anybody have a feel for that?
I'm kind of like Sherry or Carla, excuse me. We did a verbal report last year and got feedback that we were feeding too much. So they just wanted a very concise synopsis, I guess you'd say. So yes, I have used parts of that in our newsletter, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot of interest. I'm surprised.
Yeah, there's a couple things that came out of it that I know didn't make it to a couple of churches, and I was interested. And I started wondering how many others do that. There's no right or wrong answer to that, obviously, but I was just curious. Anyway, thank you.
Well, from my understanding, I could be mistaken because I'm pretty sure that the lay member to annual conference, part of their responsibility is to come back and report to their church what happened at annual conference. Mm-hmm. However, the way that they do that, it's not specified. So if they just tell their church, maybe the church admin, yeah, everything's posted on the annual conference webpage. Maybe that's their way of reporting. Others do make sure that the report that I've published gets published in their newsletter. That's all they do. Some give a brief summary. I don't know if it's after worship or fellowship, but I get the impression that they're doing that to a large group, and that they only have to do this sort of thing like just right after annual conference, which is why for some years I was being very careful about creating PowerPoint slides so that they'd have resources and wouldn't have to recreate it, since more than one church had to do that. But the other thing that happens, besides what happens at the local church, I'm going to share my screen real quick, is all annual conference communicators are also responsible for writing this report and turning it into the United Methodist News Service. And they will start publishing, like, I don't see a whole lot in here yet, because I think our conference is one of the first ones that has published or that has had their annual conference. But here you can see from the 2021 reports, every annual conference has to report them or turn in a report. And sometimes there's follow-up news that comes out of that report, where the general church will connect with various groups from our conference, or because the resolution had passed, then they want to write a follow-up story about it. So that's another way where it gets out to a further area. Were you going to say something, Jim? Okay.
On our side, just to answer Sherry's question, our lay delegates went ahead and created like these 2-3 minute videos that are all being edited together with some photos that we took at annual conference. And those will be shown at both worship services at both campuses on Sunday, just during the mission moment time. And then this link that you put together, Christina, is great, because we have a weekly newsletter. I'll put it in the weekly newsletter that goes out next Tuesday. And then we'll upload it to the website this week too. So it'll be on the website, probably, maybe I'm thinking for at least a couple of months or so, maybe till the fall. Because I do think there was, obviously there's a lot of, just kind of regular business type of things that most folks aren't that interested in. But, folks did hear about what happened in Florida, and they wanted to know our response. And I think they were pleased to hear the solidarity. And then there was a lot of questions about what has been the conference's response to gun violence. So being able to report back and say, look, we had a lot of conversation about that, and there was a lot of orange stoles and orange t-shirts and things like that. So there's, this is definitely at the forefront of what the conference delegates are thinking about, I think is important. So again, they're probably not going to go much beyond that in terms of what they want to hear, but that much I know they're concerned about.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, really, because if you don't say anything and then somebody says something somewhere and they start looking for stuff and then start wondering, what else are you not communicating? That's the biggest thing, is being very transparent and talking about the things that, if they want to know more, they're going to ask you. And you're right. For the most part, they're not going to dive into the rest of that. But I think, exactly from the point of the gun violence and 2 or 3 other things that were in there, how many admin council folks know that? How many is that getting to the pews? And that was one of the things that Christina and our group, the commission, then looked at. What are we getting to the pews? And even if they don't want it, to Jim's point, we don't have to inundate them with things, but what are the top 3 things they ought to know, or the top 3 to 4 things they ought to know out of the conference? And if they hear it from their pastor and they see it there, then they know their pastor is, being transparent, and they feel good about him, her. And if not, then you start wondering, why am I not getting that information? And so it's just important for all of us to feel like we're getting everything that there is out there to make informed decisions. So kudos to you for doing such a great job. That's awesome.
Yeah. Then there's also that Sherry's comments reminded me that the new Covenant Council that's meeting on right now, it seems like it's almost like a quarterly basis. But I know the next meeting we're going to talk about if we need to ramp up frequency, or does it need to be less often. But I know our last meeting was just before annual conference with a plan for the next meeting after annual conference to talk about all of the things that came out of annual conference. So what does that mean for Covenant Council to be able, what do we need to do to put resources out there or organize our different committees? What are churches going to need? What are clergy going to need? What is churches without campuses? What are they going to need? That sort of thing. And so I'm sure they'll Covenant Council, and then we do happen to have a gun violence task force that is a subgroup out of church and society that will be working on things as well for that aspect of it. Because for those of you that didn't know, the resolution on regarding gun violence, but it's just about no guns on our church campuses. So if you're watching this and you have a campus that doesn't have a policy at this point, heads up, now we have a resolution where that affects every one of our churches. So how do we enforce this? I'm sure there'll be questions. It'll be something that you might want to bring this to your trustees committee to have a discussion about it. Do we need to have signs? Do we need to have a connection with local law enforcement? I don't know. Those are things that you might want to bring out of annual conference to specific groups. And certainly our conference committees will be talking about these same things. So if something comes out of your trustees group, a question or a resource that, well, we're going to need something, like we can't afford to pay for signs, and now apparently we need to put up signs. Maybe that's the decision. Then that information needs to come back to the conference so that the committee or task force that's working on this sort of thing can figure out, okay, well then how do we fund this? How do we coordinate this? So it's not every church having to do the same thing. It's the conference committee working it out and here facilitating, and it's that whole connectionalism piece of being a United Methodist. So, well, one of the connectional pieces. Any other questions or comments about that piece? All right, thank you all very much. Oh yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Is there, I know you linked to the report, is there somewhere that has like an executive summary or we talked about like the top 3 points. Is there somewhere that I can find that easily, or is that just kind of all written up in the report?
Well, the report is supposed to be the summary of, this is 2 days worth of stuff.
I know I'm asking for a lot.
So Chris,
Yeah.
I would talk to your clergy and lay member who went,
Okay.
and look at have them look at the summary, and maybe there was something else that was very meaningful to them. If different churches would be inspired by different things. If you had a local pastor who received a certificate, that would be something you would want to highlight. So it would be good to ask your actual delegates that went.
Okay. Thank you.
And from past years, to Carla's point, I've heard of some churches where the biggest thing that they got out of an annual conference was the laity session. And they wanted to make sure, how do I get the recording of that? How can I make that happen again at my church? And I believe that this laity session is one of those situations where we do have permission to share the recording with our churches so that your laity could do something with this as well. And Martha Lundgren, the deaconess that ran the laity session, she'd be able to come to your church or run a Zoom session to further the dialogue there if people are in a place where like, well, I want to follow up with her and work on a plan for my household or for our church or whatever. So thank you guys. People, thank you everyone. Sorry. All right, next item is about Zoom. So one of the questions I've been getting lately is, in fact, it started just before annual conference. So for some churches, this is nothing, but if your pastor is switching to a different church, this might be a topic for you. The question was about transferring my Zoom license because pastor's going to a different church, or maybe the church didn't have a Zoom license through the conference, and the pastor coming in had a license through the conference and knows that, hey, we can do that. I want to start a new license at this church that I could use. So the licenses are still available if you're going to purchase a new one. Just email me and I'll include, well, you can respond to my follow-up email if you need help getting a Zoom license. I'll send you the link for paying for a brand new license. But transferring the license, it's actually pretty easy, but it's not always what you need. So I'd much rather ask everyone to connect with me. Let's have a conversation to figure out what exactly is happening with that current license. Does it need to be transferred over, or can that person keep it and then, you know, the church purchases a new license, or the pastor pays for the license? You know, there's different situations, and part of the big deal is in some instances they believed that they needed to transfer the license to someone else, but turns out the email address that the pastor was using for the Zoom license wasn't their personal email address or anything like that. So they could just stop using it and let the new pastor start using it and change the password. So there's that option. And if that's the case, I recommend that the former pastor changes the password to some temporary, obviously temporary password. I'm sorry if you hear the noise, I'm still having construction. Change the password so there's no indication of the type of password that the former pastor normally uses, and then give that obviously temporary password to the new pastor to change to whatever he or she likes to use or wants to use for that specific license. So that would be my recommendation of doing that. Another instance where like it's not really worth it to transfer, you're better off just starting a new license here and having a new license for the church. That's instances where there's no recordings saved on your account. There's no reoccurring meetings that you're trying to save those links. So if the Zoom was really just used to join meetings, there's no real benefit to transferring over. It's just easier and cleaner to have that pastor just start with a new license at their new church, and your new pastor starts with a new license at your church. That makes sense. See how it gets really complicated? That's what I'm saying. It's much better if they just connect with me. I'll walk them through what the options are and we'll figure out what's the best approach. Questions about that? Okay. Alrighty, then. Oh, I do want to mention, although I don't have the cost in front of me, I want to say it was something like 120 for the year, and it's basically an enterprise level license, and it includes the webinar for up to 500 people and large meetings. So you could have a meeting for up to 500 people. And as an enterprise account, you get unlimited recording. Oh, you also get the toll-free number. All of that's included in the $120 for the year, but it is for that calendar year. So if you were starting a new license right in July 1st, it's still going to be 120 because I have to pay, not me, but the conference has to pay for that whole year of the license. So you're just reimbursing the conference. The conference doesn't make any money on it or anything like that. And because of that, it also makes it easy to just drop a license and start with a new one, because we're basically turning that off and turning on that one license allotment under a different email address. That's why that's not really a big deal in that sense. Okay, next item was, okay, so I also had some questions about running a hybrid event via Zoom. If you didn't know, we had annual conference both in person and via Zoom, and because we had small group discussions, we needed to have the annual conference Zoom portion as a meeting. So if you didn't know, webinars do not allow you to run breakout rooms, but meetings do. The part two to that question was that they had attended an event with the conference where it was a webinar, and it started out where you have the main speaker, and then at one point They switched all of the attendees to panelists so that everyone could meet like a meeting and see each other. So you can only do that in webinars. You can't do that in meetings. So if you have to have the breakout rooms, you have to plan for a meeting. And that's what we did with annual conferences here. We didn't do a webinar, it was a meeting, but it looked kind of like a webinar. So the way to do that is, and I'm not going to get into the details, I'm going to send you a link that demos in a video exactly what to do. But basically you just run a meeting in focus mode and you can turn it on and off fairly easily. The demo is going to show you how to do that, and that makes it look like either you're running a webinar, which means people are seeing the main speaker instead of each other, and you can mute everybody and even take away their rights to unmute themselves. That sounds harsh, but it's just for that moment where you need everyone to focus on the presenter and you don't need to have people accidentally unmuting themselves during that time. So I'm going to send you the link. You're going to love it. It's very simple video where they demo everything. You can see where all the buttons are. I think you'll like it. So questions about that? Go ahead, Carla.
Does anybody else have a question? Because mine's related, but it's not directly about that. So my question is, you can't do Zoom registration for a meeting. You can only do it for a webinar. And I know you guys had registration. Is it hard to create it as a webinar and then right before it happens, change it to a meeting so that you can do breakout rooms? Does that present problems?
That's a great question because it isn't hard, but it's actually really, really easy to mess it up. And that's what I did. I had started out the annual conference registration as a webinar so that I could import all of the registration information for everyone. Because in previous years, we discovered it was very confusing for people, very frustrating to have to register for annual conference, to pay for their registration, and then go and register for every single one of the Zoom sessions that were required to participate at annual conference. It was very confusing. Like, I already registered. Yeah, I registered for Zoom, but I can't get in. The link's not working. Well, it's because you didn't register for the second webinar of annual conference. And so that's why now we just import all the registrations, but you can only do that in a webinar, not a meeting. So I'll see if I can find a video that shows you exactly how to do it, but basically it's in the back end. I'm gonna log in real quick. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it because I'm running Zoom right now. Oh no, I'd have to sign in and it might kick me out. Okay, so I'll find a video to send you, but because I'm pretty sure it's demoed somewhere, and if it isn't, then I'll just record myself doing it. It'll be like a 15-second video to show you exactly what to do. You'd have to log into the Zoom.us site to change your webinar into a meeting, and the item is way at the bottom to switch it over. And way at the bottom is where you also import your registration information.
So
but the big deal,
it won't change the link. I mean, you didn't have.
It does.
You send it. There's a different link to join when it went from a meeting to a webinar.
From a webinar to a meeting, yes.
Yeah,
because so what happened by accident is that when you enter registration people to be panelists, Zoom will automatically send an email to those panelists to alert them that, hey, here's your join information as a panelist. It'll do that automatically unless you uncheck mark the alert my panelists, I think is what it is. If you remove that check mark, then it won't do anything. They're not going to get an email. So as far as the link changing, that doesn't matter because they never got the webinar one. But if they did get the webinar one and you opened up the link, you'll see that part of the URL includes webinar in it. And so once you change it to meeting, that link is no longer webinar / blah, blah, blah. it's a meeting. So the link does change, but it won't matter if your registrants never get the webinar link. And
Okay.
so keep that in mind. And I guess I might as well, I wonder if it's helpful. So the other thing I discovered is as a webinar, you can pre-schedule reminder emails, follow-up emails, all that stuff. So you can type them all in, customize them, and Zoom will take care of sending it to all of your registrants. As a meeting, you don't have that option, but you can send them the Zoom email about it by going into your registration list and page by page clicking, select all, and then click resend invitation, next page. Select all, resend invitation. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys if you've done something like this before. I'll try to remember to include that in the recording though. Other questions about Zoom? Okay. Then, so that was it about the hybrid. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned, so basically you would run the meeting in focus mode. That's what makes it look like a webinar. And you can even, you'll see in that video that I'm going to send you how to mute all the participants and how to make it where the participants only see you. They don't see everybody else. They just see like the initials of them instead of their video as well. So that's an option. The other thing I want to share with you guys, I've got 2 resources coming up. One of them is Racial Justice Prayer and Action Challenge. It seems like it's a little bit late, but this is an ongoing thing. It started on Sunday for Juneteenth, and it goes through, I want to say it's like July. Let me find it real quick. There it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. This is from the General Commission on Religion and Race. I'll send you this link. Yeah, so there, it started on Juneteenth, but it does keep through end of July. And there's a lot of great resources here. You've got the prayer booklets, these other downloads. They've got stuff for social media. I'll find that one. Where was that? The slide backgrounds. Oh, here we go. So if you go to their Facebook, and I think I've got it open here, you'll see they've got things that are posted that are just ready for you to reshare or just share from your church. So you can get started this week and then be right on time for, I don't know if they're doing this daily. I didn't take a close look. This was 4 hours ago. Oh, maybe they just have them all posted and then you just do one a day or one a week. I'm not sure. Oh, I see. It's because they're in different languages. So this one was today's, I guess, but in different languages. That is so cool. Okay, so take a look at that stuff. I'll send you the link for it. And there is one more that I'm actually working on right now it is from Duke University. It's a resource that our New and Vital Faith Ministries wants to have publicized. It's, let me click on the link, let's see here. I'll share my screen again, sorry. So the link that I'll send to you guys includes all of this stuff, the communicator options that you want to use. In fact, this, where is it? Promotional copy. This one is what I'm including in the article that I'm posting, this part here, along with a lead-in intro from, why are we sharing this? But so lots of great stuff that you'll be able to share in your communications, but I want to try to find the point of it. Here it is, Duke University, Rediscovering the Heart of Methodism, Cultivating a Scriptural Imagination. So this is kind of part 2 of free, I think it was like a 4-week resource that they had, and now they've got part 2. I believe that this one's also going to be free as well. Yes, 4-week course. Doesn't say if it's free, but I know that the first one was free. Oh, here it is. Enabling this course to be offered at no cost. Yay! It is for a limited time. So I'll include this in the follow-up, and you can, check it out, share it with maybe with your pastor, or if you have like an evangelism committee. I don't know what other groups it would make sense for your church, but you can take a look at it, and I'm sure it'll make sense once you see it. That's all that I have at this time. Does anybody have something to share? Jim? No? Oh, sorry. I thought I saw your finger pointing up. Thank you for joining me. As usual, please be sure to send me an email if you have any questions, something comes up, you need a resource, you're looking for something. I will include the link to that Google spreadsheet that has resources in there, and I will update that with these resources that I'm sharing today in the follow-up email, but I haven't really had time to do anything else on it because annual conference. But I'll start updating it each week now. All right, thanks again for joining me. I'll see you all next week. Have a great day.